Hello,
Hey,
and we're live.
welcome, guys. Welcome to the PTZOptics pre-show podcast. I'm joined with Paul and Tess. My name is
Hello.
John. Welcome to be here with you guys. And today we're talking about some PTZ cameras. We're talking about the Move family, which is the Move SE, the Move 4K, and our Link 4K.
Woo woo.
So I want to ask you, Paul, right off the top, and break down some of these cameras here. And we can start out with the Move family here. I want to know right off the bat the resolution of the Move SE and the Move 4K, and really the difference between these two cameras right off the top.
Yeah, good question. And Mike's actually got a really good shot of this. We got a whole lineup here of, we're going to do a pretty big shootout today. So get ready.
Yeah.
We've got all three of them sitting here. I think Mike's got control of these babies. We've actually got a Move SE, which is a 1080p camera. We've got a Move 4K, which is a 4K camera. And we also have our Gen 2 cameras, which we've had for a long time, and they are 1920 by 1080, right? HD, full HD quality. So we're talking about full HD and what people say we call Ultra HD, UHD, which I should know this. I think it's 3140 by 2160.
Yes, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Which is the resolution. But essentially, we always say 4K. And 4K is twice the resolution of 2K. And sometimes 1920 by 1080 is considered 2K.
Mm-hmm.
And 4K is twice that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the resolutions. And with a 4K camera, our Move 4K, a lot of our customers are using digital zoom.
Okay.
So when you've got a 4K image space, you can actually zoom in 2x extra and still have 1080p quality. You can zoom in 3x and still be in 1280 by 720, which was like the original HD format as well.
Wow. Okay. So with the Link 4K camera, is that the same sensor as the Move 4K camera?
It is. So it's the exact same sensor.
Okay.
These 4K sensors are making a big difference. But honestly, even with the whole Move series, the Move SE and the Move 4K, we've switched to Sony image sensors. And I actually have, I think the data sheet up here. I was looking at this. Thanks for putting that together, John. Our 12x 4K sensor has 8.5 million pixels.
Wow.
And the 20x and 30x have 8.42 million pixels. And they're basically 1 over 1.8 inches, which is bigger than they were before. So they're bigger and better, and they've got more pixels.
Wow, that's amazing. So we're seeing improvement over the G2 models, and we're pushing to 4K with both the Link and the Move 4K, which is really great. So let's look into like a specific feature, like maybe auto tracking. Now, did we offer like auto tracking out of the box with our G2 cameras in the past? Or is this new for us with the Move and the Link cameras?
The G2 cameras do not have auto tracking, though with our CMP application, you can now, with their latest firmware, have them do auto tracking. But out of the box, the G2 cameras do not have auto tracking, but the Move SE and the Move 4K and the Link 4K all have auto tracking out of the box.
Okay, awesome. Is there anything different between the auto tracking in each of those cameras, or it functions pretty much the same? You could interchange them.
The SE is a little bit different with auto tracking. It's a bounding box. Is that right, Paul?
Yeah. So, the big difference, there's a couple big differences in the auto tracking world that I do want to touch on. One is, software versus built-in. And I talk to a lot of our customers about this because, there's a lot of software enabled auto tracking cameras. And when you look at built-in and you go, oh my gosh, that's a lot of computer processing compute that is oftentimes bolted onto a live streaming computer that's already taxed with whether it's vmix or OBS or multiple cameras coming in. So throwing auto tracking software onto a computer is good if you've got a Gen 2 camera and you want to add auto tracking. But having the auto tracking built into the cameras, especially if you've got more than one, really, especially if some education organizations have 100 auto tracking cameras, and there just is no way a single computer could ever manage all that. So having it just built in general is great. But the other big difference with the Move SE and the Move 4K is we have presenter lock. And that allows you to lock into a specific person. I think we're going to show that off today, but it does not get confused. So over the years, 5 or 6 years that there's been auto tracking cameras, most of the ones out there are based on motion. So it sees something moving and it follows them. But what happens if there's two people? It doesn't know what to do. With the latest computer vision chips in the Move SE and Move 4K, they actually are able to identify a specific person in the scene. You can click that person and have it follow them.
Wow, that's amazing. So you could even integrate these G2 cameras with a workflow with our Move family and the Link if you wanted to. And you could all across the board have tracking if you needed to.
Yeah, I was just talking to one of our customers in Germany who has all Gen 2 cameras. And it's a small church. They have 4 volunteers, but they split up the Sundays. So each volunteer goes one Sunday a month. And as soon as they got the auto tracking in there, they just turn it on with their Gen 2 cameras. They run the CMP software. And I was surprised. He told me it's like an older Intel i7 or i5 computer running the CMP, and it can handle auto tracking for one camera pretty well.
Wow.
Now, the free CMP software, if you go to PTZOptics.com/CMP, you can download it for free on a Mac, PC, or Linux computer. It can handle auto tracking for up to 4 cameras, but that'll take additional processing power, and you should probably check the minimum requirements for your computer to do that.
Okay. So we have the Move SE, which is 1080/60, the Move 4K at 4K 60, and then the Link, which includes Dante AVH. And do they all come with the same lens size, or are there multiple lens options for each of these cameras? Well, I'll ask you, Tess.
Well, wow, that's a good question, but it comes in 12x, 20x, and 30x optical zoom lenses. So you have that option for each camera. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So a
Does that make
12x,
sense?
Yes.
20x, and
We're
a 30x.
going to show a 30x zoom demo in a moment here. I've got these tiny little Legos here. And I think Mike told me I'm allowed to take control of a Move SE 30x. Let's see. I think I've got it here. Yeah, I've got it right here. I can zoom this camera in. A PTZOptics 30x camera is able to zoom in of a head and shoulders shot of a human from up to 75 feet away. So about 25 meters for our friends across the pond. And you can see here, I'm zooming into a very tiny Lego man that our friends at X Keys made us. One for me, one for you, Tess.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it's about 30 to 40 feet away. And there are our little Lego men. There's one for me and one for Tess. Right there. So just to give you an idea of the 30Xs are really popular because if you're in a big space, you never know how close you might zoom in on something. And our 30X models are only a little bit more expensive than the 12 and the 20. So they tend to be pretty popular.
Okay. Wow. That's incredible. So you imagine like large houses of worship, industrial buildings, just large rooms where you could really use that zoom. And additionally, you have that option as well for the Move 4K if you want the 4K quality to zoom in, and also e-zoom as well. So you mentioned a little bit about the price. Could you tell me a little bit about the price difference between, we'll say, the Move SE and the Move 4K, and what it really takes to jump up to that 4K number? And is it worth jumping out and upgrading, and specifically what sort of production might you need for 4K so that enhanced quality? So first, let's talk about the prices here for the Move SE and the Move 4K. What is the price difference off of the 12X? We'll do the standard.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I like to do is just say, like, the 12X Move SE starts at $1,000, and the Move 4K start at roughly $2,000.
Okay.
So there is about $1,000 price gap. And basically there's 1080p versus 4K. In the world today, there's a big difference between 1080p and 4K equipment.
Yeah.
Video switchers at 1080p are very affordable. 4K video switchers are more expensive.
Yeah.
When you're making an investment for your organization, a lot of times, you get funds once and you want to make a future-proof investment. And that's why we are seeing the 4K still being very popular, even when our customers set the 4K cameras to 1080p. Just knowing that they can click a button and be ready for 4K in a year or two from now is a popular choice.
Yeah, I could see it being great for a kind of hybrid environment. Say you want to stream, you can easily do 1080p. If you want to record higher quality, you can bump that up to 4K and get a better record if you'd like. Most people aren't streaming in 4K, they stream 1080p. So that's still kind of the industry standard when it comes to streaming here. Alrighty, so I want to talk about some of the output options you have on some of these cameras. So do they all have SDI? Are they SDI units or HDMI? Or do they have both of SDI and HDMI for each camera here?
Yeah, good question. So they're all powered over Ethernet, by the way.
Okay.
So they all got Ethernet, meaning you can stream from every single camera, and that's been true for almost every PTZOptics camera that we've ever made. IP connectivity is incredibly important. So you can connect these cameras to the network, control them with vmix, control them with OBS, control them with the SuperJoy. So IP connectivity, when we're looking at the back of a camera, is kind of the start. And then we have HDMI, SDI, and USB. So it can be plug and play with Zoom if you want, or you can mix and match with SDI and HDMI depending on your workflow. And that's the same for the Move 4K and the Move SE.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you, Tess. We haven't talked too much about the Link 4K and how it integrates Dante AVH. I want to ask you specifically why someone might go out of their way instead of buying a Move 4K. Why would they go to the Link 4K instead?
Well, the Link 4K has Dante AVH, which offers, in this case, audio and now video over a network cable, multi-channel uncompressed digital audio over the network. So if that's what you're looking for, then that's why you're going to go with the Link 4K, especially if you have an existing Dante infrastructure. Now these cameras can integrate seamlessly in with that.
Okay, that's really interesting. That's really good to know because it is very specialized. It's something that's very specific. It's not for everyone. Or if you're looking to expand and make a Dante workflow, that might be a perfect step to kind of jump into that world. But let's look at these other cameras, the Move SE and the Move 4K. They offer NDI, is that right?
They do. Not the SE. The SE you would have to upgrade to NDI, but the Move 4K offers NDI HX.
Okay.
HX3.
So if you have an NDI workflow, the Move SE, the Move 4K are perfect cameras to integrate with your NDI workflow. I want to jump into something that might be a little fun where we can kind of take these three cameras
I like fun.
and look into specific markets maybe. And, obviously these cameras can work for any market. There's adjustments and you can kind of adjust on the fly, like I mentioned, with a 1080 streaming or 4K recording quality. But let's go over some of these major markets, and we can start out with churches. So what would you say is an ideal an ideal camera for a church who is streaming every Sunday? Would you go with the Move SE? Is it dependent on a church's budget, how much they can spend on, let's say, 3 cameras, a Joy G4, and have a setup like the bundles that we're going to have soon? What do you think churches should look for? Should they jump out and go for the 4K quality?
Well, it depends, like you said, on budget.
Mhm.
Sometimes going with a lower budget, but being able to buy more cameras at that lower price point, you might want to get the SE so you can deploy multiple cameras. So it depends if you want more cameras at a lesser price point, lesser quality, or if you want one single camera at a really superior quality.
Mhm. Yeah.
Would you agree with that, Paul?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think that is the choice that folks are making. Most of the churches I'm talking with are still streaming in 1080. I'm going to say 90% of churches started streaming in 2020, right? And when they did so, they were doing it in 1080, not in 4K, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And so a lot of churches are saying, hey, in 2020, we got all this stuff. It was crazy. It was hectic. Not quite the perfect setup. Now we want to add a few more. And today what we're going to look at is color matching a Move SE with a Gen 2 camera, because a lot of our customers are saying, hey, I'm already set up for 1080. It's going to be very easy, low budget to put in one extra Move SE. And when you add a camera that is not quite the same exact model, you have to do a little bit of color matching just to make sure they match perfectly. And we're going to show that today. We've got this PTZOptics CMP software, and you can very easily color match a Gen 2 PTZOptics camera that you might have purchased in the past with a new Move SE camera that maybe you're looking at adding to add a behind the scenes camera or a different stage camera or maybe there's a piano player or an angle that you want to add. Who knows? There's lots of different options here. And Mike is showing the super preset. Mike, let's spend a second on this because I asked Mike, look how cool that looks.
The super preset.
Let's show the super preset real quick. So, and I want to talk, since we're on the topic of houses of worship, the super preset is a super feature for houses of worship. And here's why. If you're a house of worship and you have 3 or 4 cameras, your volunteers come in and they volunteer to help you and they operate your cameras for you. But oftentimes when they get set up on their first stream, you come back and the cameras are all over the place. With the super preset, you can set one button to have all your cameras go to the place that you think they should at the same time. So it's a great way to just walk in, click a button, all your cameras are set to where you want them to be.
Right.
Wow. To just jump in and immediately be ready. That's amazing. And a lot of churches, houses of worship have volunteers. So it's, a lot of people that are not very experienced. They are not used to using a lot of AV equipment. So having one button to press and they're good to go, and a simple joystick to kind of control the camera makes it really easy to set up and go. So I want to transition over to a different market here, something like education. And I'm curious, what do you think would be the best camera for education? Could it even be a Dante-enabled camera like the Link 4K?
Definitely. I definitely think it can. There's lots of educational organizations using Dante already.
Mm-hmm.
Dante has some awesome tools for managing your cameras and other equipment on your network. So Dante has something called the Dante Domain Manager. And I was at IBC and I got a chance to really use it and look at it. And Dante Domain Manager is used by a lot of AV departments in universities and colleges where they've got different microphones and different cameras now even that are being controlled and managed remotely with Dante Domain Manager. So it's a very easy way for organizations to manage multiple systems. So where NDI is oftentimes used in studios and productions and live streaming environments, Dante is often preferred in those larger enterprise situations where there's a bigger university and you've got lots of devices that you need to manage remotely.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That remote access will be huge for, an IT administrator, someone who's in a center location on the school who can control everything, every camera, every sort of AV device on the property. I think that 4K sensor too is extremely helpful for like lecture halls, large rooms where you want to track, as well as the auto tracking, track speakers, track any sort of educator that's in these large rooms. And you can zoom in like we just saw with the Lego Men and see the crisp quality that you can get on a 30x zoom.
We have a question here coming in from Space Age Consulting. Is the super preset on the controller or the camera? Was Michael just using it?
You know this one, Tess?
No, I don't know this one.
Take a guess.
I'm not going to guess if I don't know.
All right. It's on the controller. So I'll show this really quickly because I always love to jump into stuff on my screen here if Mike has a minute. So we've got our Super Joy. We've got these custom buttons here. And then on my screen, I'll just show you guys. The Super Joy is an IP connected device, right? It's on the network. And there's these custom buttons that we have the option to set up. Now, my custom buttons here are actually set to turn on and off auto tracking, which we're going to demonstrate in a little bit. But Mike's Super Joy that he has, he set them up here. If I click a button here, I'll show this for super preset. So the joystick can send 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cameras to their presets. Plus, it can send an HTTP command. And an HTTP command can be used to switch vmix or start streaming or all kinds of things. But yeah, that answers the question there. It's coming from the joystick.
Yeah, that's great. I want to move into another market here, something like sports broadcast, whether it's professional or we recently had a wonderful case study that was on, what was it, Frisbee golf? Is that what it was? Or it was just...
It was flag football.
Flag football, that's what it was, which was a great case study of how they're integrating our cameras and using, I think, Move SEs to record and film their events. So I think auto tracking is a huge feature for something like sports, whether you're following something who's speaking, maybe it's introducing everyone, or you're following maybe an athlete or someone on the field. And I think maybe the Move 4K might also be another great choice for that if you want to use the zoom and have that increased flexibility for zooming in and out. Would you guys agree on the Move 4K?
Yeah, and I think that 60 frames per second would be important as well for sports.
Yeah, definitely.
Being able to capture those frames.
Yeah, and I've spoken to a lot of, in sports, it's incredibly important to have high frame rate and high bit rate, because if you don't have either of those or one or the other, you have a problem because the ball's moving quickly, right? You want to be able to see it. You don't want people to, so that's where the high frame rate comes in. Mm-hmm. Now, oftentimes I've seen sports companies say, hey, we're going to stream at 720p, 60 frames a second, because we want the bit rate to be really high. So it is sometimes from a streaming perspective about a high bit rate, right? And you can think of a bit rate as how much paint is on your painting. So like if you have a blank canvas, you've got 0 bits. If you've got 5 megabits per second, you've got 5 megabits of paint in your image that is making up your image. And if you have 10 megabits, you've got twice as much, right? Data. And that's how the quality is.
And that comes from like your internet connection.
Yes. That's how much bandwidth you have to stream reliably. So when you're doing sports, a lot of times they want to have a high bit rate to support the high frame rate. But still 4K is great for like recordings online. So they might not be streaming in 4K, but they want to keep it for uploading on YouTube, for archiving. And then the 60 frames a second, not only is that good for capturing fast motion, it's also good for slow motion.
Oh, okay.
So when you do an instant replay and you want to slow it down and say, was he on the line? Was he not on the line? That's where you want to have that. Two things. One is you want to have 60 frames a second or even 120 frames a second if you can get it. And then you want to have all the cameras synced together perfectly, because sometimes in an instant replay, you'll look at it from different angles and you don't want one to be, a different sync than the other.
Yeah.
So sports can be tricky, but these cameras are great for sports.
Yeah, no, it sounds perfect, especially with the 60 frames per second. That's amazing. I want to lean into, because you were mentioning quality and 1080. I'm curious about the opposite side of things. I know, especially with like houses of worship, they are limited by their network and what they can afford in terms of bandwidth. And I know for a lot of churches, they're still streaming in 720p because that's just, the max that they can really allot on their network. So can these cameras, or maybe the Move SE being the most affordable PTZ camera that we offer, can they drop down below 1080p? Is that possible?
Yes. Oh, 100%. So on the back of these cameras, there's a little yellow dial. And the little yellow dial, you use something called a tweaker. You're familiar with a tweaker. It's like a little tiny Phillips head screwdriver.
Tiny tool, yeah.
And you just twist it. And on the bottom of every camera, there's a chart. And the chart will say, hey, if you have the yellow dial at 0, that's 4K 60. If you have it at 5, it's 720p.
Okay.
So that's how you set the hard outputs, meaning the SDI, the HDMI, I believe the USB.
There's a view of it.
There it is right there. There's that little yellow dial there. And if you, for the IP outputs, those are configured. An IP output would be NDI, it would be Dante, it would be RTMP streaming for streaming to YouTube or Facebook. SRT is another popular one, and RTSP, all of these different IP streams, those are configured in the web interface of the camera.
Wow. So you could just even have one of these cameras and stream directly just from a single camera source?
Yeah, so if you wanted to stream directly to YouTube or Facebook or anywhere directly from the camera, you can do so, but what we usually recommend is to run an audio source into the camera so you have audio and video.
Okay. Wow, that's great. And you also mentioned that there's USB outputs as well for each one of these cameras?
Yeah, so these all support USB, so you can plug them right into your computer and they show up as a webcam.
Okay. Wow, that's great. That's wonderful. And that's really unique for a lot of cameras to work as this advanced PTZ camera, even a 30X with this crazy zoom, and then you could easily plug it and play in a USB. That's really great. So as we're on a podcast right now, I thought it'd be meta to ask, what is the best PTZ camera for a podcast? Would you go with, the affordability with the 1080p because you're kind of used to that workflow and that's still kind of the standard for podcasting?
If I was starting out, I would probably go with the SE.
Yeah.
Starting out for the podcast. And by the way, I did see a question from Sol TV. Just since we're live, I like to answer those. That yes, you can control the Gen 2. You control the 4K cameras with the Gen 2 controllers. The protocols have not changed. So you can go into a Gen 2 camera, type in the IP address of your new Move 4K camera, and it will control it. For podcasting, I love that the Move SEs are at a $999 price point. Podcasts, I feel like it's okay to get the cameras close up.
Yeah.
And we're actually showing some of our cameras are pretty close to us right now.
Yeah.
And we use the 12X cameras, so the less expensive. And the 12X cameras have a wider field of view. So you got a wider field of view. You can zoom in. I think that these cameras are really good for podcasts because you can get a tight shot, you can back out, you can lock the focus, and it's not like you have a cameraman for every camera, but it's nice to show a wide angle, a short, a close up. So I think the Move SEs are great even for professional podcasts. But once you get to a certain level, I do think a lot of YouTubers even are archiving things in 4K.
Yeah.
So while you might stream and switch and record in 1080, I think a lot of people are enjoying or thinking about, hey, this quality content that I'm creating, I want to eventually upload in 4K, or at least record and archive and store in 4K for post-production.
Yeah.
So if you're at the Joe Rogan level, if you're at a pretty high level, you probably will go 4K because budget is not quite as a concern.
At the PTZOptics level.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So it really depends on your budget. I think that really is what it comes down to, how much you're willing to pay individually for the camera and what you're looking for, whether you want that 4K workflow, the Dante workflow, which is specifically with the Link 4K. So I think we can rapidly switch off to some other markets here, like news broadcasts, live concerts and productions on stage. I think those would go well perfectly with the Move 4K, unless you have this Dante workflow, which a lot of productions have nowadays. So we haven't talked too much about the Dante integration. Before we end our podcast here, Paul, could you tell me a little bit about what the Dante AVH even is?
Yeah, so Dante AVH is a high quality but low bandwidth IP video production protocol for Dante users. And if you're involved with Dante, and you're right in saying, live concerts, performances, what happened over the past 5 or 6 years is a lot of people have transitioned from traditional XLR audio systems where you've got a giant audio mixer with a ton of cables in the back. And the problem being there's tons of microphones, there's tons of guitars and amplifiers and basses, and all these instruments that are all being plugged, and then they all have to be mixed together into a beautiful mix. And there might be a mix for the audience to hear. There might be a different mix for the live stream to hear. There might be there's all these kinds of, it's a complicated system. Over the years, Dante has simplified that by putting everything on the network. So instead of having to run 100 cables from the stage to the wherever you're doing your mixing, you run an Ethernet cable. Mm-hmm. And so that infrastructure that's in place can now be used for video as well. And the Dante AVH that we have in our Link 4K cameras can take anywhere from 10 to 50 megabits per camera. So it's a decent amount depending on the networking infrastructure that you have. A lot of people have gigabit networking infrastructure, meaning they can hold 1,000 megabits per second, or they can handle that much throughput. And the Link 4K uses a fraction of that. It's very high quality, low latency, and can be routed anywhere. So if you've got a Link 4K camera, you may be using the Dante controller. And the Dante controller allows you to route everything. It's like a matrix router, but it's software based. So it brings all the endpoints, whether you've got a TV with a Dante decoder or an audio system over here or a couple different cameras. And just from a very simple interface, you can just say, send this audio here, send that camera there, manage it all like this. In fact, they even have presets where you could say, here's my small stage preset, here's my big stage preset, here's my cameras up on the big screens, here's my main mix on the big screens. You know what I mean? So even though it is a little complicated sometimes to have all your sources and you're looking at them all, Dante's done a great job of saying, hey, let's have one button to click for this specific configuration, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. So that is the Link 4K, specifically integrated with Dante AVH. So to wrap it up here, we have the Move SE, which is 1080p, 60 frames a second, the 4K, the Move 4K, which is 4K, 1080p, 4K, 60 frames per second. A lot of numbers in my mind. And then the Link 4K, which is obviously in 4K with Dante AVH. And just to recap as well, you can integrate our G2 cameras with our new models with a great demo where we can show you how to color match, which we'll be showing you later on in the actual live stream show here. And I want to thank all of y'all for joining me. Thank you, Ms. Protesto and Mr. Richards, for joining me on this pre-show podcast. It's been a blast, and I hope you guys stick around and join us for the actual show in just a minute here.
Excited. I'm really excited for this, especially because we've got some really good demos.
Yeah.
We're going to actually use this stuff, and hopefully everything will go smoothly, right, Tess? You're going to fix it all?
Yeah. You know me.
If anything happens?
Mrs. Fix It.